Hi everyone, welcome to another live tonight with myself. I am Dr. Ellen Wood of IVFMD in the Prelude Network, and we are doing a Q&A tonight with Seattle Sperm Bank. And Alyse, one of the representatives, we're going to be joining us soon. She's going to request to come in. There we go. Here she is. Alrighty, let's say hi to Alyse. So again, I'm Dr. Ellen Wood. My office is in the Cooper City office in Florida. I'm in IVFMD. Again, we are now part of the Prelude Network, and we are welcoming Seattle Sperm Bank with us. And what did I do wrong here? Let's see. Invite. Invite to join. Let's see if I did that right. Trying to get Alyse on here. Oh, okay, that didn't work. Let's try again. Where is she? Seattle Sperm Bank. Trying to get her to join. Let's try again. Well, we're trying to get Alyse to join, but we have a bunch of questions that were submitted earlier today on both the Seattle website as well as our own IVFMD website. Let's see what we can see how to do this. There she is. Okay, gotcha.
All right, sorry. I was a little shaky there.
I know. I'm not sure what happened. Well, again, welcome back. Alyse, I missed you in September. Okay, but
yeah, I'm back.
But you're back. You're back. I hope you had a great vacation.
Yeah.
All right.
How are you doing? How are things in Florida?
Well, the nice news is it's still hot and sunny. So we've been having, again, Florida usually has wonderful weather, a little bit of rain, but again, it's just nice and warm. My daughter's in Philadelphia, and she says, Mom, it's 40 degrees outside. I'm like, ooh, that's cold.
That's terrible.
That's really cold. But anyway, I'm excited. We're going to answer some questions. It looks like you guys had some sent in as well.
Yeah, we had some good ones.
Sent in on our website as well.
Yeah.
How are things in Seattle?
You know what? I live in California. Things are good over here. It was a little bit warm right before Halloween, and now that it's November, it's decided to be freezing cold from a Californian's perspective. It's in the 60s, and it's cloudy.
Oh, that's great. That's Canada Goose weather.
Yeah. It's no 40, but it's pretty chilly over here.
Alrighty, wonderful. So, how's business?
Good. I am excited. It feels like it was a good year. Lots of families out there with new babies on the way and cooking, and lots of babies born this year, so that's always exciting and great. Looking forward to doing it again. I'm excited to do this last live of the year. I can't believe it's the end already.
I know. Well, hopefully we'll get some questions tonight, but let's start with some of the ones that you had submitted. So,
yeah.
So, okay, question, and this is a good question, but it just pertains to all sperm. How long does frozen sperm live in the body after IUI? Well, first of all, okay, it's not frozen when it goes back in your body. So it's thawed, and then the thawed sperm, usually quality sperm, minimum of 2 days, okay? But some sperm can live up to 5 days at the proper temperature. So does give a woman a window, okay, of ovulation. So where we try to really hone in when a patient is doing donor IUI with us on that window of fertility, okay, the amount of time that sperm lives does give you a little bit of wiggle room if you're not doing it, in a clinic and you're getting ultrasounds done and you're getting trigger shot. So that's always, kind of a nice thing that you have that, with strong sperm, they survive for quite some time. So that's
I feel like
good news there.
Your window that you're looking for, the harder one is the egg. You're trying to catch the egg more than
correct.
You're trying to catch it.
The egg only has a 24-hour window that it's going to be able to be fertilized. So, but if we have sperm, sperm is just kind of hanging out. You put it in, it's hanging out, just waiting for something.
They'll hang around for a while.
Guys at a bar just waiting for the cool girl, the hot girl to come in.
Make a grand entrance.
Yep.
It looks like the next question we had is about CMV status, and we hear CMV status questions all the time. And I know it's because it can be confusing, and sometimes you can read different things about it. So positive and negative, does CMV status matter?
So CMV status, CMV, first of all, let's go back and let's talk about what it is. Okay. So CMV stands for cytomegalovirus. Okay. Now, cytomegalovirus can be something that can be devastating if you catch it during your pregnancy. If you catch it in your second or third trimester of pregnancy, it can cross the placenta and it can have some very devastating effects on the fetus, like stillbirth and things like that. So CMV is something to be concerned about. However, in the general population, 75% of the general population has been exposed to CMV. So it's very, very prevalent. However, nobody goes to a doctor and you say, oh, I kind of got the sniffles, I'm kind of not feeling real great. And a doctor never says to you, oh, I think you have CMV, okay? It's not something that like you just say, you have, and basically what a doctor will say to you, you have a virus, it'll go away. We give you supportive care, have some Tylenol, take some cough drops, like, you know, it's going to go away. So this is why 75% of the population has been exposed to it, but have just never known it. So when the FDA put forth their guidelines on like how you have to screen donors, you know, and how they should be screened and what testing they should have done in order to protect the person using the donor sperm, one of the requirements is that the donor needs to be tested for CMV status. So you'll get back an antibody test on a CMV that says that patient has been exposed to CMV before. And if they have been, their body is going to make antibodies to it. We can detect those antibodies in the blood. Now, viruses are like sneaky little things. Like they just kind of hang out with you. And then your immune system takes care of them. It squashes them and says, you know what, go to bed. Don't bother me anymore. Like stop having symptoms, and you get better. So there's a lot of viruses out there that you don't need antibiotics for, you know, and your immune system just kind of squashes them. However, they have noted that CMV virus possibly can still live in semen. And so theoretically, if a patient has never been exposed to CMV and she is inseminated with a donor sperm that has had CMV and the virus is still live, you know, it still lives in that sperm, by introducing that into her body, she could be infecting herself with a virus. I mean, like, and who wants to, you know, I mean, who wants to electively, you know, I mean, if your boyfriend or your husband, you know, has a cold, are you going to kiss him? No, you're not. You're going to get better. Okay, sleep in the guest room. I don't want to get sick. So it's kind of like electively exposing yourself to something. Now, I have had patients who have the only donor in the world that is right for them has CMV positive and she's a negative status. And I said, it's not a deal breaker, okay? I have actually had them use the positive sperm because it's the only guy out there, and nothing ever happened, okay? Now, I did have a couple of patients who said, well, I'm CMV negative after 2 months, 2 inseminations, you know, they're like, can I recheck my status? I'm like, you really want to do that? I'm like, did I feel sick? And they're like, no. And I'm like, okay, fine, we'll draw it. They turned positive. Like, but they were never sick. Like nothing ever happened to them. So for me, it's not a deal breaker. But in theory, you know, if you're CMV negative, try and choose a CMV negative donor. The problem is, as I said, 75% of the population is positive. So, you know, it's going to limit your choices. So if you're negative and the only guy that you find that is perfect for you is positive, for me, it's not a deal breaker. Because by the time you're exposed to the virus, your immune system takes care of it and you get pregnant, you're beyond where the danger zone is in pregnancy. So the danger zone in pregnancy is more in that second trimester, even the third trimester, when patients actually can catch CMV. So it's very, very, very theoretical. It's very, very, very gray. But it is a part of the FDA screening. So when I have a patient, just today, she wants to use donor sperm. So I said, love to see your CMV status. So if you're positive, which most people are, you can pick anybody you want. If you're negative, you may want to consider a negative donor just for those reasons. But in my opinion, it's not, it's not a super deal breaker, but it's something to take into consideration. So if you're going between two guys and one's negative and one's positive and they're both about the same, I would probably just go with the negative guy, because nobody can predict how your immune system is going to react to something. But I have never, ever seen a problem when someone has been inseminated who's been negative, themselves, and inseminated with a positive donor. What's your experience, Alyse?
Yeah, we always say go back to your healthcare team and consult with them. We all have free donor consultations. So if you are looking for a specific donor, you're CMV negative and you're trying to stay in that CMV negative donor, because it will limit your options, a great thing to do is to come to us, and we'll help you find, here are your donors. And, instead of choosing from 200 donors, you're going to choose from 25, the smaller pool of donors. And that might help get you to a point where you're not seeing the positive donors. Another thing that we do that could be really helpful is you do fall in love with a donor and you don't know your CMV status, and you find out later on you are negative and that donor you fell in love with and purchased is positive. We'll do what's called a medical swap. Just have your doctor or somewhere from your healthcare team, your midwife, a nurse, send us a quick email and say, hey, this patient came back with a medical compatibility. You don't have to give us any more details than that, and we'll go ahead and swap that for free. So a couple of things to help you get to where you need to be with your donor, and that works with genetic screening as well. So if you find your donor early, and because donor vials can run out quickly, you purchase that donor, and then you do all of your screening or any other lab work, and anything comes back that there's a medical incompatibility, we're happy to do a free swap.
Excellent, excellent.
Yeah.
Here's an interesting question from, it says, IVF answers here, what donor sperm standards did you have per sample? You guys have the most excellent standards. And the only reason I have to continue to speak about your excellent standards, okay, is because recently I've had 2 patients that have been going through IVF, okay? And when my embryologists have looked at the sperm that's been thawed, they were using donor. Normally our protocol when we're using donor is that donor sperm is usually, let's say that it's healthy sperm. We're not doing IVF because we have male factor, because we have a low sperm count. We're doing IVF because we have other issues, tubal issues, pelvic issues, things like that. So sperm is the least of my concerns, okay? And so when the laboratory, emails me or texts me and says, you know what, please let your patient know that instead of doing standard insemination, okay, which is we take an egg and we plop 150,000 sperm on top of it, okay? Put them in the incubator, sperm go to town.
Yeah. They go have their party.
100,000 to 1, okay? Come on, somebody should make their way in, okay? I've had 2 cases in the last month or 2 that the embryologists have said to me, Dr. Wood, we have to do ICSI. I'm like, what? It's a donor. And they're like, the sample is so poor. And I'm like, well, it's good enough for ICSI, right? And they're like, it's hardly modal. I'm like, can you find enough? And they're like, okay, yeah, we can find enough for the 1 vial. I'm like, okay now. And I'm like, where is it from? It was not from your bank. It was not from your bank. Neither sample, they were from 2 different banks. The sperm, with ICSI, where ICSI is intracytoplasmic sperm injection, where we take 1 egg and we take 1 sperm and we inject it directly into the egg. So we have no problems with fertilization with that. But again, when you're using donor sperm, it shouldn't be an extra step that the embryologists have to go through in order to fertilize your egg. It should just be like egg, just plop the sperm on top of each egg and put them in the incubator. So it was something unanticipated that the embryologist needed to do. We were absolutely prepared for it. We absolutely achieved fertilization. It was just not expected. Usually when we're thawing samples, the samples will come in, samples that are meant, can be used for assisted reproductive technology like IVF. There are special samples that are labeled as IUI, so other samples that are labeled as ICI. there's certain samples that we expect standards that when they're thawed. So where are you on your cutoffs? Because I know you have excellent cutoffs.
Yeah, so for those IUI, which is what most people are purchasing regardless of treatment, it's 10 million per milliliter. And we get a lot of feedback from labs that they are seeing higher numbers. And I think it really comes down to we start with very healthy donors to begin with. Only one applicant out of every 1,000 applications we get actually make it into our program. We're really strict about that. And then our lab is very guarded about keeping those standards high. So if we had a donor who just didn't produce a lot of volume, that's okay if the quality and we have really good sperm counts, we have really great motility, they can still be in the program and make their one vial. Versus a donor who maybe has larger volume, we're not gonna cut a donor off and try to get more vials out of them. We want high quality vials. And then we continuously communicate with our donors. We tell them, make sure you're getting sleep, make sure you're hydrating, watch what medications you're on, stay away from hot tubs, and we continuously give them that feedback. And then as they're coming in, we're doing semen analyses on every sample they're giving us, and then we can give them that feedback. So they get a report saying what their numbers were, and then they can kind of gauge, it was finals week last week, I was really stressed out. It was Halloween weekend, maybe I had too much candy. So we give them that feedback and let them know where they're at. And then they see our physician on a regular basis and get physical. So they're getting medical feedback on how to keep the samples, starting from good samples.
Excellent. It says the other part of the question is, can you predict odds in each donor? So do you just have kind of standard across the board, per cycle, pregnancy rate?
Yeah, we're not taking the donor and predicting, this guy is going to get more pregnancy, because we would choose every guy who only got pregnancies, right? There wouldn't be anybody else in the program. Instead, we're choosing very healthy men. We're talking to them about their health and how to maintain those really high quality samples. And then we're giving them that feedback when they're coming in for their visits and just monitoring their visits. So if we do see someone who's going in a direction where it's not, our donor coordinator will sit down and say, hey, what's going on? Have you started a new medication? Have you started new supplements? Because sometimes it's something they aren't aware of. An easy one is getting into a hot tub. Guys don't necessarily think about getting into a hot tub to relax is going to affect their sperm counts, but it really does.
Oh yes, you can see. No, they certainly plummet.
Yeah.
But the background average. That we basically the odds for each donor. Unfortunately, if you maintain the standards that you guys are maintaining, the pregnancy success honestly has to do with female age. It has to do with female age. You can inseminate a 22-year-old with the same sample that you can inseminate a 42-year-old with, and the 22-year-old's parents are getting pregnant with that with good timing is probably at least 25%, and the chance of the 42-year-old getting pregnant is maybe like 3 to 5%. So again, we're age, you can't predict his odds of success because he's inseminating multiple different women of multiple different ages. So I'm sure you can take the same donor and inseminate someone at 22, 25, 28, 30, and you're going to see different pregnancy per cycle success rates because mainly fertility has to do with female age, and if you maintain your standards, it should be pretty standard across the board. Yeah.
We're making sure they're abstinent for the right number of hours to give us those good samples as well.
Okay, excellent. If a medical issue should come up after a donor retires from the program, do they report that to the bank? You do, right?
Oh, I love that question. We talk to our donors every year, even the ones who've retired, for
the whole life.
For their, for the foreseeable future. We've done it for every donor so far. I don't have a good reason to stop talking to them. I don't have.
How long has your bank been open?
Since 2007.
2007. Okay.
So, we are a younger bank, so we've been able to maintain these things like open ID donors the entire time and have these great genetic screening panels that everyone's been on. But this is another thing, is we have this continuous feedback that we're getting from them annually. And those questions are, you know, what's your health status now? Have you seen anything new? And then we ask about their family members as well, because that's something that we look at in the beginning and something we want to continue to look back at. And we really
do you notify, you know, so say he
Yes.
says something got diagnosed in his family, and then, you know, because you have to get reported all the pregnancies that he created, do you notify the people that used his sperm, like, of what the updates, the updated medical status?
Right. If so something came up and it turns out it puts like an offspring at a risk factor for something, we then go back and notify all of those families. Yes. We have genetic counselors on staff who can take a look at that data and better understand what those results mean. And then we can reach back out to them as well and ask them more questions. You know, if somebody said something and we were unsure how that would affect the offspring, we just reach back out to them and say, hey, can we get more information? Can we start a conversation? Can we get any medical records to then share with those families, and how do we do this? So yes.
So say a donor, he has 6 successes all over the country, and so one of the children had an issue. I mean, it could have been from the mother, but it was from and the mother reports that back to you guys. You notify the other families that have the same genetics.
Yes, if it depends, you know, if it's going to affect the other offspring. So if that parent reports back to us, our genetic counselors then going to talk with them and ask them the relevant questions. You know, figure out where this came from, see if we can trace it back to the donor, maybe go back and have a conversation with the donor, and then notify any parents of relevant medical information. We, of course, don't want to go back and tell everyone right away, and turns out that it's not that big of an issue, or it's not something that's genetic or puts them at any higher risk. But if any offspring are at higher risk for any medical conditions, you know, whether it's genetic or any adverse health outcomes, so we're going to go back and talk to all those families, of course.
All right. So what do you guys do to psychologically test and the background? And I mean, I'm sure I know your donors go through such a rigorous medical screening. They also go through, because when we do egg donors, they take that personality 400 thing personality test to make sure they don't have any bipolar mental problems. I mean, it's a very long personality. I forget what it is. I'm not a psychologist, but it's like something. Yeah. Like, do they take
the DSVM? yeah. I know what you're talking about. So the way that the process works is they go through donor counseling to get into our program. And so they talk about certain medical conditions. And so they'll talk about those mental health conditions and also talk about their family history of that. So not just them, but it's a 4-generation family medical history. So that we can look for trends and see if anything stands out. And that's going to be handled by the donor counseling team.
All right. And then again, you said it's how many donors? You said 1,000 donors you do the screening on, and you pick one?
So for every 1,000 applicants, only one makes it into the program. Yeah. We also do background checks,
That's
fingerprinting.
Like medical school.
And then we check all their records. Yeah, if they say they're in medical school, we look at their transcripts. Yeah, it's intense.
Wow. Yeah, I just like it that you follow up on their medical history constantly. I think that's, you know, that's and so there's another one from another question. It just says, what factors negatively affect a sperm sample? Again, you certainly mentioned, but I mean, definitely environmental and occupational exposures are certainly going to affect sperm. Okay, but you're going to see it right off the bat. I mean, you have a guy that brings in, you know, a sperm count with only 1% morphology. Okay, well, he's out right away. Like what, you know,
yeah.
Say, all right, you know, stop your pipe fitting job because you're sniffing the glue all day, and bring us back a sample. No, you're gone, buddy. Like, I'm sorry, like you didn't even give us a normal semen analysis. So, I mean,
we'll have that conversation with them because samples can vary between, you know, each time they're coming in. So they don't just do one to get in the program. They have to do a couple of them. And then we'll have
So
that
they
conversation
come
with
and
them.
practice test.
Yeah, we do some practice ones. And we freeze it and we thaw it and we see how they freeze and thaw as well, because as you know, not all semen samples are going to freeze and thaw well. And these samples must freeze and thaw well. So
Now, do all do that? Do all clinics do the freeze thaw thing? Like with the
to
test sample?
test for it, do all the sperm banks do?
Right. I was just shocked when my embryologist said to me, like, they're, Dr. Wood, the sperm are 10% motile. I'm like, they sold this? I mean,
You know what? I don't work at other banks.
Doing ICSI, but and we got fertilization, but it's like that's not you don't want donor sperm to thaw and not be moving.
Right. Yeah, I can't speak to what other banks. I'm sure they are. I'm sure they're looking at test samples. Sometimes it could just be a handling. I don't know. I can't speak for other banks, but I know for us, we do. We'll freeze it and thaw it and take a look at to see if it freezes and thaws well, and if it's still maintains that quality
Because some guys
threshold.
just don't like the freeze and the thaw. I mean, we
They
see
just
that.
don't.
A semen analysis looks good. We freeze the guy because the guy's a truck driver and he's driving all over the country and his wife's ovulating. So we'll do freeze samples and then we thaw it and we're like it looked good when we froze it. Like what the heck? And and so some guys, even though they look good, but their initial semen analysis don't thaw well.
Yeah. So we'll give them that feedback, and we'll say, hey, how was this week? Were you stressed out? Are you drinking a lot of alcohol? Was there a party this week? Did you get plenty of water? What's going on in your life that could have affected these samples? And is that something you can change? So of course, if they're doing some sort of for their job, they're doing something that exposes them, that causes this, we're not going to tell them, you got to quit your job to join our program. But if they were like, oh man, you know what? I had the flu last week and I had a high fever. Then we'll say, come back in a couple of months.
Come back in 3 months. I'll say that.
Yeah, exactly.
I had a guy, the guy had very low motility. They're ready to start IVF. And the day she's supposed to start her stimulation for IVF, she calls us up. She goes, my husband has COVID and 102 fever. I'm like, call me in December. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, no. I'm like, but they'll reject. I mean, they
exactly. They come back.
I mean, we've seen guys who've had COVID and 3 months later they're back in action. So.
Yeah,
but it does put you down for a couple months. All right, so another question that you guys have: does the doctor recommend for timing using frozen sperm for home insemination? So again, the home inseminations get a little bit variable, and timing is really so critical with this. So that's why I love it, because I have the luxury of having my ultrasound machine and looking at the follicles. Okay, but that is really not the norm. I mean, it's my life, but that's not the norm out there. The norm out there is someone's like, oh, I feel like I'm ovulating, or I'm checking your temperatures. But the best accurate way, and this is what we usually would advise patients who aren't working with a fertility clinic, is an ovulation kit. Most ovulation kits are 80% effective. Okay, and if you have a regular menstrual cycle, okay, and you're using an ovulation kit, you're starting it on the second morning you're in day 12 of your cycle, and you see a positive surge, you're going to be ovulating within the next 24 to 36 hours. So that's going to be your window where you're going to want to have the sperm on order. You're going to want to, do whatever instructions you guys give for home insemination, if you're not working with a clinic. But that's going to be your best way. Now, for women with irregular cycles, okay, I do not recommend spending, $800 to $1,000 on vials of sperm, and your cycles are 35 days and 42 days and 20 days, and your cycles are all over the place, okay? It's too risky. Your ovaries just doing what the hell it wants. And even when I'm working with someone, they're like, oh, well, we don't want to come in for so many ultrasounds. We don't want to do this. It's fine. When you get your positive surge, okay, come in for an ultrasound, and we will confirm that your surge and your ovaries are in sync. So you have a surge, you come in that day, oh, yep, there's your beautiful follicle, excellent. You're going to ovulate, your kid is not lying to you, okay? If you want to do the insemination with us, fine. If you want to do it at home, fine, okay? But we just want to make sure that your kid is not lying to you. Although 80% of kits are accurate, so but there are that 20%. But if you're the woman with variation in your cycles, I'm not a huge fan of, home insemination just because of variability. Just because of variability, we don't want to be putting sperm and there's no egg. I mean, that's that doesn't make sense to me. So I'm about efficiency. Okay, I think that women that are using donor sperm are a unique category in the fertility business because technically they're not infertile. They just need sperm. So they're something that we should be able to help very, very easily get pregnant because you're not really considered infertile. And if you're over 35, you haven't gotten pregnant in 6 months, you need a vow. If you're under 35, after 12 months, okay? But who wants to do 12 months of donor insemination? Okay? I mean, that's like $12,000 of sperm at minimum if you're just doing one insemination, maybe even more. So you really don't want to do that. You want to maximize when you're using donor sperm and target your timing because timing is so key.
Yeah, and then on our end to help out with those home inseminations, we do ship 14-day tanks. So you can have your tank sitting there ready to go before you ovulate. And then because there is variability, if you don't, you're not ovulating on the exact same time every month, which is very normal.
But what if you never get a surge and you have your sperm sitting there? Like
you can mail it back to us. You can mail it back to us.
You can mail it back. It's like, oh my God, I never got a surge. I only have 2 more days left in my tank.
Yeah. Send it back to us. It'll get it back to us in 2 days. Okay. And then you got to figure out what you got to do. Then you call Dr. Wood and you say, I didn't ovulate last month. And this ovulation predictor kit didn't work for my body. I need assistance. And then you move on to a little bit of assistance.
I mean, there's some women having nice 28-day cycles. Ovulation every month, day 12, 13, 14, 28-day cycles, ovulation 12, day 15, 14. But we have some women, this month I ovulated day 16, that month I ovulated day 20. This month I didn't even get a surge. I mean, that's irregular, but some people, lots of them are like clockwork, like 28 days, 20 days, 20 days. I mean, you can have some variation within your cycle. You can be 30 days, 30 days, 30 days, but we really shouldn't be more than 2 to 3 days off when we're dealing with a donor sperm situation. Okay.
Yeah, and then if you're trying a lot of months, like Dr. Wood's saying, it could take 12 months if you're under 35 and you're not technically infertile. So if you're spending a lot of months doing this, it might be helpful to go talk to your healthcare team and just kind of get a better idea of what's going on in your body. If you've never tried to get pregnant before, you may not know that you're not ovulating. When you think you're ovulating.
It's my world, but there's a lot of women out there that even have regular cycles that are right on. Okay, and they're not ovulating. When they start to use the ovulation kits, they're like, well, it kind of looked a little darker. Nah, I never really got the smiley face. And they're like, do you have regular cycles? Yep, every single month. Boom, boom, boom. And then, I said, all right, we'll come into the office and we'll scan you on day 12, day 13 when you should be ovulating. And you look at their ovaries and you're like, nope. I'm like, you're having what we call anovulatory bleeds. So monthly bleeds without ovulation. It does happen. I mean, I see it. I see it a lot because people are not successful, and that's why they come to me. They're like, why am I successful? So we can certainly help that. I mean, we're very efficient as using our oral fertility medicines and following you with ultrasound in order to get you to ovulate, and then you get pregnant. But it's very, very key. Again, I see, the part of the population that is having difficulties. The majority of the population is fertile. But if you are using donor sperm and you're over 35, my personal recommendation is that you work with a fertility clinic because it does get more difficult over 35. If you're 24 years old and you have regular cycles, home insemination, it probably is going to work for you if you're having regular cycles. But as you get into that kind of into your 30s, to make things more streamlined and efficient, I always recommend at least working with a fertility clinic. And the reason is, it's the sperm's not free. I mean, it's great quality, but you got to pay for it. I mean, it's different than a couple that is just having intercourse. All right, what do we have here in your questions here? Okay. Does IUI have to happen on your exact day of ovulation to get pregnant, or the trigger shot force ovulation? Okay, so if your ovary is not ready to ovulate, the trigger shot isn't even going to go to force ovulation. However, there's certain parameters that we look at. We look at the size of the follicle. So if a follicle is 20 millimeters or larger, okay, and I really don't get enthusiastic about triggering people when they get too big, like up to a 28 or 30 millimeter follicle, because I'm always questionable whether they have eggs in them. But I've extracted follicles, fluid from follicles that big in IVF and gotten eggs. So sometimes they do. But again, my ideal size follicle is a 20, a 21, something like that. Now, there are some women who will have a mature follicle and ovulate at 18s or 19s, and sometimes we might miss their ovulation, but we're kind of aiming for a 20. I mean, a 20 millimeter follicle seems, for me, over the last 22 years, could give me the best results. So there are times when your body says, time to ovulate, and that's when you get the surge. That's when your brain says, all right, I'm feeling the estrogen levels, I'm feeling this follicle's ready, and your brain says, yep, let's ovulate. Now, sometimes the brain just doesn't pick it up as quickly, and so we can augment that with the shot, the trigger shot. So the trigger shot is going to act like the LH if your body's like getting a little lazy, and that will induce ovulation. So when we give the trigger shot, the follicle should pop within 36 hours. So we definitely want some sperm there before that 36-hour ovulation. If your body ovulates its LH surge on its own, we don't know when it peaked. So there's a little bit more variation there, because you'll ovulate from the onset of the surge at 36 hours, but the peak of the surge 24 hours. So, but you don't know where you picked up the surge, on the upswing or the downswing, because LH is only going to, you only should be able to pick up your LH in your body for 24 hours. If somebody comes to me and they said, oh, I've had a positive surge for 3 days, there's a problem. Okay. And I have patients say that, oh, I've been positive on my surge. I'm like, no. I'm like, there's a problem. It's you pick it up once, or if you're testing twice daily, if you're testing at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. or whatever, 11 a.m. 11 p.m., you can pick it up twice if you're testing twice a day. But if you're only testing once a day, you should only have 1 day of the surge. We should never have 2 days or 3 days or 4 days of a surge, because LH does not stay in your body that long. It's very, very, very short acting. So you do have to be careful with that, and that's a red flag if you're having that issue. But the IUI, again, technically should definitely happen prior to ovulation, and then we do 2 IUIs routinely in our practice. So we do it just before ovulation and then just after we feel that ovulation has occurred, because sometimes patients will have a delayed ovulation. So we want to make sure there's enough sperm there.
Nice.
All right, cool.
I know we had one from your side, your account, that said an embryo of 4BB is still good for transfer. So that's, they're talking about the embryo grading.
Yeah, I was about to say, an embryo of 4BB is a beautiful embryo. That's a perfect embryo. So I'm not sure where we wouldn't think our embryo was good. I mean, a B grade of an embryo means the baby part is nice and the placenta part is nice. So that's an excellent embryo. The other question was also from the same person. Can I get transferred 2 embryos at once, one from donor, one from husband? No. Okay, number one, we only transfer 1 embryo at a time, okay, because we do not want to have twins. And then if you put in 2 embryos and you get pregnant with 1 baby, whose baby is it? Like, it would be nice to know. I mean, I guess you can do genetic testing on the baby and see where the DNA was from a donor or was it from the husband. But, I mean, those are really extra cases in really certain circumstances when you're going to consider transferring an embryo from 2 different fathers. That's just...
And you want to maintain kind of a chain of custody of events, because it's still a medical procedure, and you want to be able to have the proper documentation of, I did, when you go to the FDA, someone's inspecting your lab, what did you transfer to each patient, and be able to report that accurately.
It really muddies the water. So again, I would do a transfer with the husband embryo if it was nice, and then if that didn't work, then maybe try a transfer with the donor embryo if it didn't work. I would not combine the 2. We had one patient who wanted to, hopefully you guys help them out. They were kind of upset because, again, they had gotten information where they could get inseminated on one day with one donor and another day with another donor.
Oh, no.
No. 1 month with one donor, another month with another, no two different donors. And who do you know got you pregnant? Like it's, you know, that's just gets too sticky as far as genetics and medical history and who created the baby. And anyway, apparently they were.
On our end, we keep track of the pregnancies as well. So we've got to be able to report which donor had that pregnancy.
I think our clinic was going to reach out to you because when we shut it down, they were kind of upset because they said, well, that's why we bought 2 samples. And I said, and she did actually get pregnant that month, thank God. But then she had this extra sample of this other donor in the lab, and it was in our lab, and we said we would try to get you guys to at least take it back at half cost or something like that.
Yeah, with our buyback program.
I'm hoping that happened.
Yeah, I think that because you guys have a consignment tank,
Yeah.
you know, it counts as being part of our lab. I'm pretty sure.
So I'm hoping that happened because again, they got misinformation. We're not sure where that came from, but they were expecting to be inseminated with 2 different donors in 1 month, and I'm like, shh. Like that's.
I feel like I hear the idea, especially if you're in love with 2 donors. It feels like from a very good idea. Just like I love both these guys; they're amazing. Someone should work out of these 2.
All I know is being pregnant with twins is sucking the life out of me. Nice. Yeah, twins are tough. I mean, twins are a tough pregnancy. We're, you know, they're everything. You know, the double everything is cute. It's not really something we're doing electively anymore. I mean, in the early days of IVF and in the early days of fertility treatments, you know, this was acceptable because nobody really knew how to help patients. All we are out there is just trying to help people, and so. We knew our success rates weren't that great with IVF, so we would say, here, have 2 embryos, have 3 embryos, have 4 embryos, and this was 15 to 20 years ago. And then we got stingier and stingier and stingier with embryos because our success rates, you know, started to you know, skyrocket so nicely. And, you know, we are only even considering transferring 2 embryos in the face of multiple failures and knowing not what else to do. So our clinic, as of January 2019, you know, we're only giving patients back, you know, 1 embryo at a time. Just 1 embryo, if it doesn't work, let's do it again. 1 embryo, it doesn't work, because your singleton pregnancy will be such a smoother ride to baby and so much higher success rates as far as the health of the baby is concerned.
And the mother as well.
I mean, you know, everybody concerned. I mean, it's not that twins aren't healthy. I mean, you know, there's hundreds of thousands of people that have twins out there. It's just, again, it is difficult on the body. It's difficult on the babies. I mean, I just had a patient who had 3 failures, and we did, you know, we did end up putting in 2 embryos. Of course, she got pregnant with twins. To 3 failures. You know.
Well, and those embryos can split, so you can put 2 in and get more than 2.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, I've had that too. But you know, the babies are okay. They were born 2 pounds or something. They're in the NICU, but they're going to spend a month or 2 in the NICU. Again, most NICU babies in good NICUs, they're fine. But it's again something that you really, you know, you don't want your little baby in the NICU.
Hard.
You know, you don't want to born at 2 pounds. You want to born at 7 pounds. You want to take them home with you from the hospital. You know, so you know, we try to be, and patients, you know, beg us to, you know, put in. No, we're just it's the way things are going. Our success rates are so high with implantation of just 1 embryo. It doesn't make any sense to even first, second, or even the third try to even consider more than 1. What does it mean when embryo is compact or cellular on day 5? Okay, so what that means, okay, so embryo progression. So the cells have to divide, okay? So it'll go from 2 cells to 4 cells to 8 cells to 10 cells to 12 cells to 14 cells. And then when it hits about 64 cells, it looks like kind of a raspberry, okay? It's just a ball of 64 cells. So that's what it's called, kind of like a 64 cell compacting. It's called a morula, okay? So then what happens in that morula, the embryo, it's pretty cool. Some cells come out of those 64 cells and they go to make the baby. And some cells go to make the placenta. And then fluid fills this capsule that all the cells are in. And that's when the embryo becomes a blastocyst, when the fluid forms, okay? So when an embryo on day 5 is still cellular, that's not good. It hasn't started to compact. It hasn't started to become that 64 cells that's going from one cell, you know, to the other cell. So cellular on
right,
day
by day 5, you should see that nice. blastocyst. So by the time you get to day 5, it should have
Like
already.
on day 5. That's what you want. Now you can be compacting on day 5 and be a blastocyst on day 6, or even a blastocyst on day 7. And we do have good results with blastocysts on day 7 that have actually been genetically normal. Took them a little longer to get there, but they've ended up being genetically normal. So that was surprising when we first started to test them. I'm like, wow, some of these are normal. We have reasonable, I think we have respectable pregnancy rates with day 7 embryos. But it's a concern when embryos are compacting and cellular on day 5, but it's not all hope is lost type of thing.
Right.
If we're day 6 and we're compacting still cellular, we're not real. We have a problem. We have a problem with the embryo. There's definitely something wrong with its health. My embryo tested BP resulted in a blighted ovum. How does this happen? I wish I knew. I really, really wish I knew. This is one of the saddest type of things that and this everybody, I mean, like, we have these huge meetings, and we had this meeting 2 weeks ago, all, reproductive endocrine people all over the world. Okay. And I swear everyone's like, how do we get the normal embryo to make a baby? Like, everybody thought when we put a normal embryo in, 100% people have babies. Nope. Some of them don't stick, and some of them miscarry. And it's so, so devastating because we tested it, and most miscarriages are caused by genetic abnormalities. Now, there are genetic abnormalities that the testing misses, not a lot, but the testing can only go so far. I had a young lady today who we thought her embryo was normal, and she had a miscarriage, and at 9 weeks after a heartbeat, and we found out when we took the sample from the miscarriage that her embryo actually had a problem that the genetic testing does not detect. Like, it says it right there in the consent form. It does not detect this. And I was like, wow. And so, there are weird things that unfortunately can happen in a very low percentage of patients. Thank God our loss rate with PGS embryos, PGT embryos is low, but unfortunately it still does happen. I make sure my patients make sure their uterus is evaluated thoroughly before I transfer an embryo. I make sure that their immune system has been evaluated thoroughly before we transfer an embryo. That's been tested to make sure we're not missing anything that the body might do to reject an embryo. But I've had this situation with patients. I had one patient years ago that we had 2 empty sacs from 2 tested embryos that were normal, like right in a row. We tested her upside down and sideways for everything. And in that situation, I did recommend that she have someone else carry one of her other normal embryos, and she did have a baby because something we could not identify was going on with her that was not allowing her body to keep the embryo growing. It was just such a sad situation, and I wish we knew. I mean, everyone in my field, that's the big question. How can we get these normal embryos, or what we think is a normal embryo, to continue growing? It's what we're all doing the research on. So you're not alone. Hopefully you have more tested embryos to replace, and hopefully you've gotten the complete evaluation before you move forward with another transfer. All right, tips on choosing. This woman who answered a question from us. She was looking for an Italian. Are there not that many Italians in Seattle?
So we have 4 labs where we're looking for donors.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But
we're all
it's not just there's 2 in the Seattle area. We've got another one in San Diego and another one in Arizona. So we still may be missing an Italian population, but
I don't know, where do you find Italians in the U.S.? Is there New York? New Jersey? I mean,
well, we're next to big universities, so you get a lot of different ethnicities going to these bigger universities, and so that helps a little. We actually do recruiting with on-campus organizations, so we specifically look for organizations with different ethnic diversity, and try to do outreach that way.
I wouldn't have even thought about it. Where do you? I mean, I think certain demographic. I mean, if you come to Florida, we've got a lot of Hispanics. Okay. I mean, you go to California, there's a lot of Asian. You know, I mean, there's just the kind of but I'm thinking Italian. I'm thinking Northeast. I'm thinking you need a lab in the Northeast.
Yeah, I think so. I think what we can do for you here is if you're looking for specific characteristics or features, reach out to us, send us an email, cs@seattlespermbank.com, and just let us know who you're looking for. And if you had photos of someone specific or even a partner, you can send those in, and we'll go through and try to find someone with the characteristics and ethnicity and other requirement. You know, keep in mind, the more you know, and you want them to be 6 foot, and the more you add on, the smaller the pool gets. But we will do our best to find someone matching those features. This CS team sometimes has a good pulse on guys who were in the process of coming into the program. There is a 6-month hold on all new samples. So they may have a good idea about someone who's in that 6-month hold, or someone who isn't listed on the website because there's a waiting list and they can get you on the waiting list. So reaching out to our customer service team is a great way to get to try to find someone very specific for you. And that's a free service. It's not going to cost you anything. And we'll come back and tell you if we don't have that. We're pretty transparent about that. You know, if you're looking for someone really specific and we just haven't found him yet, and you're ready to get pregnant today, we'll just recommend other banks that may have that. I know myself and my other colleague, we've reached out to other banks and said, hey, we have someone who's looking for this person in particular, and they happen to have been a genetic carrier of something, so they needed someone very, very specific. And it was tough. So we'll reach out and try to connect you and try to find someone.
That's great. Now, one of your questions was genetic testing should the patient do before choosing a sperm donor? So again, I screen my patients with SEMA4. So SEMA4 is an expanded carrier screening panel. And that panel includes 283 different genetic diseases. Okay. Now, these are all genes. So it doesn't mean you have a disease. It just means you carry the gene. However, the majority of the population seems to have something. So if you carry cystic fibrosis, you need to make sure your donor was screened for cystic fibrosis, because if he also carries cystic fibrosis, then if you used him, your baby would have a 25% chance of having a disease. So it's probably not a good idea. So you want to make sure if you have something, and again, I use a very large expanded genetic screening panel. If you have something, you want to make sure that the donor does not carry that specific disease. And so you want to make, so if you carry, the deafness gene, you want to make sure he doesn't have the deafness gene. Some, these weird esoteric diseases out there that are quite rare. How many diseases are you screening for in Seattle, Alyse?
So our donors are doing the Myriad Foresight panel, and it's 175 conditions. And you guys are doing SEMA4, and so there's a lot of overlap there. Sometimes,
right.
Conditions have different names.
SEMA4 found and Myriad didn't find, can you guys check them for it?
Right. So our genetic counselors will reach out to that donor if they're actively in the program. Next time he stops by for a visit, hey, you've got an extra blood draw today. If they are no longer in our program, then they get a phone call and, hey, can we mail you out this kit? Will you do a swab inside your cheek, and can we get those results? And so if you are trying to get pregnant as soon as possible and you're not willing to wait, we can, again, do a medical swap or help you find another donor who is medically compatible. But if you're willing to wait, that test will sometimes take 2 to 3 weeks, and sometimes it can take a donor who's retired a couple of weeks to get that test back to us. But we will do everything in our power to get those results to you. And then on the other end, if you haven't done any testing and you just need some help, our genetic counselors are free for you to use as well, so that you can give them a call and just say, hey, what do I do? And you can get tested on our Myriad panel. You can go to your healthcare team and get their panel testing. But we're here to help guide you through the world of genetics, because it can be very complicated. And
right. And the great thing about these genetic tests now, they're not that expensive.
Right.
You see, one genetic test was like $700, and now I think 283 diseases that SEMA4 does. I think they're charging, I don't know, $250, something like that. Like for 283 diseases. I mean, the genetic panels have really, because there's so many different companies out there, but they've really become like very, very, very reasonable in order to find out this genetic information. I mean, I know
I can say it's $450.
I have enough information. I'm like, you can get a little more from my panel. But I know 23andMe does a lot of diseases as well.
I want to say 23andMe, I want to steer away from 23andMe and Ancestry for medical information.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I go more with the expanded carrier screen for Myriad or Recombine or SEMA4 or all the different companies that, that do it like medically.
Yeah, go to a medical, not.
Again, I don't take the 23andMe person. Use this. I'm like, let's get a little bit more medical. But then some patients will ask me if that's enough, and I'm like, it's not quite enough. I mean, just to be safe. So options of finding donor siblings. How do you guys handle that with the donor siblings?
Oh, awesome! Yes. So we have a internal sibling registry that's anonymous and verified. And so once you have reported your birth to us, congratulations, and you say, hey, I would like to get connected, then we give you a login it's called SSB Connects. And you'll be connected with other families who've opted in as well, who have used your donor. So these are families that we have verified, have used that donor, have purchased and reported a pregnancy as well. And it's all anonymous. So you can go in and just share medical information or just share, hey, my kiddo has a dimple. Does your kiddo have a dimple? You can share kind of these fun things until you're comfortable with that other person. And then you can share more information as you wish. But we kind of give a foundation where it's anonymous and verified, and you can go here and kind of get to meet people on your own comfort level.
That's wonderful, wonderful. Last question. I have an egg donor. I need an egg donor. How does this change finding a sperm donor? And again, I would suggest the genetics. Just to make sure, what do you call them, medically compatible or genetically compatible? So, if your egg donor carries cystic fibrosis, your sperm donor just can't carry cystic fibrosis. Or if your egg donor has sickle cell, your sperm donor can't have sickle cell. So really, it's just the genetics that you want to make sure are compatible. I think that's super important. Just to have that information. And again, most donor egg banks are also doing these expanded carrier screenings, up to the Myriad level that you guys are. So most, banks, and it's evolved. I mean, I talked to a lady today and she's like, I thought you did genetics on me. I'm like, well, in 2017, we were only doing 22 chromosomes. Now we're doing 283. So we've kind of stepped it up. We need to kind of update your genetic panel. Even though you didn't have any of the 22, we have to make sure you don't have any of these other 200, and 50 diseases that we have the ability to test for now.
Yeah, and feel free to send your egg donors, genetic records to our genetic counselors to help find a donor. You're like, I don't know what this condition is, or you're just
most of the conditions I don't know. Like I look at them like I have no idea what that disease is, but as long as it doesn't have it, don't worry about it. There's such diseases that I really have just not familiar with. All right, when your last question here is, my wife and I are planning to look for a donor and start trying to get pregnant at the beginning of 2022. What can I do to get ready now? Well, my first thing is start taking prenatal vitamins. Okay, we want to make sure that the woman who is trying to get pregnant is ingesting the adequate amount of folic acid, which I feel should be in the methylated form. So methylated folic acid is a folic acid that is absorbed directly into your body. Okay. Even if you have a gene mutation that doesn't allow your body to absorb regular folic acid, that will not affect you if you're taking methylated folic acid. So the first thing is you should be taking a prenatal vitamin for 3 months before you're trying to conceive, containing methylated folate. That's number one. Then obviously optimizing your health, okay? Optimizing, your weight. We don't want to start off a pregnancy, at an unhealthy weight. We want to make sure your blood pressure is good, your blood sugars are good. Health. I mean, patients who are trying to get pregnant electively, okay, have this luxury of making these preparations for it. There's many babies out there that are just like oopses, okay, and
I've got one of those.
Again, that's just, it is what it is. And and the OBGYNs deal with it. Okay. But when you have the opportunity to say, all right, we are going to initiate fertility treatment, we're going to do this, you have this ability to control the health of your pregnancy. Most women who, if it's in your wife and I plan using a donor, maybe the husband has an issue. Again, we look at the age of the wife. If the wife has a husband who unfortunately has, no sperm or a sperm problem, and they need to use a donor, okay, based on her age, she'll probably get pregnant. She'll probably get pregnant. And if she does not get pregnant within the first, 3 or 4 tries, and, hopefully you're working with a doctor if you're doing a home thing. But if she's not pregnant 3 or 4 tries, then again, you should get a further evaluation. But the number one thing is, again, optimize your own health. Make sure that, you get physical, you're not taking any medications that would be harmful, that would cause birth defects in a pregnancy. And make sure that you're taking that methylated folate, because methylated folate will prevent neural tube defects, anencephaly, spina bifida, devastating, birth defects in pregnancy that occur like when you're 5 and 6 weeks pregnant and don't even know that you're pregnant. So that's just something very, very, very simple. All right, Alyse, it is, I think we got through all your questions and most of ours. It's 8:30, okay? This was such, again, a nice, wonderful, hopefully it was an educational experience for the patients and all the patients out there that were listening. This was wonderful doing this with you. I wish you a happy Thanksgiving. Happy holidays,
you too.
okay?
Yes.
Hopefully we will talk again, you are often our audience, in the new year. And hopefully 2022 will be a productive and fertile year for all of our patients.
Yeah. This was great. Oh, it's been a long day.
It's been a long day. I know. Well, again, for me, it's been an even longer day because you guys, you're in California. It's
it's 5:30 over here.
It's 8:30.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Wood, for having us on here again. I can't wait to do this again all over in 2022.
Anybody can follow me. I'm on Instagram at Dr. Ellen Wood. We're also at
definitely follow Dr. Wood. She has a great Instagram page, very entertaining.
Sperm Bank. So wonderful, wonderful. All right. Well, hopefully we answered the majority of the questions, and everybody have a great night.
All right. Good night. Bye.